G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so good to see you. Well, isn't there a lot of excitement out in the camera world right now with Canon, Sony and Nikon all just getting up to something or another. Now, in the Nikon space, we've just had the release of the Z5, the release that it's on its way. Cameras are out there, they're being tested, that's all very exciting. And in a move that doesn't surprise me at all, they have stuck 2 SD slots in it. Now this video is about XQD CF Express versus SD and just presenting some hard evidence that I have experienced myself as to the pros and cons of each format. So when Nikon first released the beautiful Z6 and the beautiful Z7, can't show you the Z6 because there it is right there, but here's my Z7 with the battery extender grip, which I actually love. Even so, lots of people hate it. I don't care. I actually think it's cool and it's really cheap. When those cameras were first released, the Z6 and the Z7, they had one slot, XQD slot. And we pretty quickly found out that that XQD slot was also going to be compatible with CF Express, which is the most modern, fastest, robust, best designed card we've probably seen as photographers in the 35mm space across the board. Now, as a little bit of history, Nikon first introduced this card in 2012, would you believe? 2012 in the Nikon D4. It had one CF card slot, compact flash, and one XQD slot. That's when it first started. Then it appeared in the D850 and you were able to get a dual card version of it in the D5. So Nikon have embraced this technology for quite a long time now because they believed in how good it was. Nikon would not put this in its pro level cameras if they didn't thoroughly believe in it. It just makes no sense to do it time and time again unless they think it's actually better. Like, a lot of people think Nikon is stupid. I don't. A lot of people do. But no company is that stupid to keep persisting with something in their professional space because it's worse. It's just completely and highly illogical. Moving to the Z6 and the Z7, they only had one slot and so many people complained about that one slot. Now you might have noticed if you go to a building site, or I've been out to oil rigs and so on and so forth, you might see a sign that says days without incident. Now I did a little quick calculation and I am 600 days of using the Z7. You can watch this video here where I very first looked at it and unboxed it back in November of 2018. I started using the Z7. Now I was able to use it with a card that was supplied at the time. I was a pretty early adopter and got the kit with the Z7, the F to Z adapter and the 24-70 f4. It also included an XQD card. That card is still running. Since then I've purchased a couple more. I have now also got 2 CF Express cards. They're a cracker, they work great. So 600 days without failure, without incident, absolutely no problems whatsoever. So many people's arguments were, oh, you know, 2 SDs are better than 1 XQD or CF Express. And I think unless any of us actually work for Sony or Nikon or work in the memory making world, you know, we don't know for sure. But what we can look at is hard data. So as I said, over 600 days without incident. I'll make another one of these when, say, we get to 1,000 days without incident. If we get to that point, let's hope we do. Some people complain because we now have SD and it should be CF Express or XQD. And some people complaining because the second slot, now we've got it, but you can't record video to both slots. And on it goes. People complaining, never happy with what they're given, always wanting more, always expecting the world to expand to every possible need and permutation anyone could possibly think of, yet this is coming in camera bodies, and in this case the Z5 will be around $1,000 body before long in US dollars, I'm sure. Yeah, I feel like expectations are too high. Ultimately, what I want to say is CF Express and XQD have worked extremely well for me up until this point. I'm very confident working with it. Yesterday I shot all day for a client with my one CF Express card in my Z7. The reality is I've done over 95% of my photo shoots on a single card, whether it's Compact Flash, SD, or CF Express. And I think a lot of that just simply comes from the fact that prior, I think, to the D3, which is 12 years ago, you only had one slot. So that's the way you shot. And prior to digital, film, and well, film was a highly difficult and far more dangerous media to work with than digital media, because you could, if you were a bit silly, you could accidentally open the back of your camera and ruin everything. And you're changing film every 36 shots, you might have a wind-on error, the lab might damage, all sorts of stuff could happen. There was so much risk in photography previously. Now this statement is not made to say 2 card slots obviously, clearly create redundancy. That's not what this statement is about. Of course it does. What this statement is about tolerance. It's about tolerance and expectation and reality. Tolerances are high. Someone like me who's had a camera in my hand for 40 years, been working professionally for 30 years, you're just used to not having redundancy. That's the majority of my working life. And then as redundancy was available, well, you were very used to not having it, so you just worked with it and you didn't really think about it. And then finally, the actual instances of failure are so low, it's a non-problem, really, in reality. And as I said in a previous video that you can see here, which was just a tip on how to absolutely minimize card failure, it's to format it just before you're starting to shoot, because at that point in time, if the card is unhappy, it will fail during the format, and then you know to put in a new one. So what you're talking about here is not do cards fail or not fail, but the real issue is, if a card fails, does it actually affect your work? Sure, that SD card or that CF Express card fails, but it has no impact. It has no material impact on what you're doing because you've tested it. Just like you get your car service, you've tested it, it's failed when it didn't matter, you replace it, you move on. That's just the logical way to behave. So if you kind of take all those things into account, that, look, failure is an option, test before you shoot, just before you shoot, you can do many, many, many things to minimize risk. And one of the things you can do to minimize risk is to have 2 cards. And I've said this before, and I don't want to go off on a tangent because I didn't really want this video to be about that, but as a professional photographer, there's a larger problem than card failure, and that is camera failure. And it does happen, and it's happened to me probably almost the same amount of times as card failure. Not many, like 3 times in my entire career, but it does happen. So if you're worried about ensuring you're in a position to be able to supply your client on the day, not only do you need multiple cards and multiple card slots, you need multiple bodies that can get the job done. And that is why for the last decade or more, I don't know how long's it been? Probably almost since I started with digital, I've had 2 bodies capable of shooting and crossover redundant lenses, so that if I lose my 24-70, I can pick it up with my 24 prime, 50 prime, 85 prime, you know, whatever you need to get the job done. I would really love the ongoing debate about SD versus XQD and CF Express, 2 slots versus 1 slot, all those debates. I'd love them to stop, because there's so many layers to this sort of stuff. Like, I just want to ask the question, if you're, let's say, a wildlife shooter and you go off into the forest, you hike for half a day to get to the perfect spot, and you've got your 2 card slots, are you hiking with 2 bodies? Because if you're not, you're putting yourself at exactly the same type of risk. I am confident that these cards here are superior to SD. The technology is just so much newer and it just uses a completely different operating system and everything about it. They're more robust, they're better designed, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff. That there are people better qualified than me to tell you about all the different ways these are better. But they're better. And I can feel it because I use them every day. And I've used SD for whatever it is, over 20 years at this point. And there's no question to me that this is a superior format. Of course, Canon are now using them in the R5, and Sony will be using the smaller version of CF Express in the new A7S III. So it is being adopted. It is understood to be the future, the next step. It's clearly fast. And as much as SD is trying to keep up, this will always be able to be more. But that's my experience. There it is, 600 days without incident on the Z7. And of course, I've had it in the D4 prior and the D850 prior. And those cards also, I mean, I'm actually still using the same cards that I bought for the D850. And gosh, how long ago? I mean, that was 2017. And then the previous one for the D4, I didn't use so much because the technology just simply wasn't broadly around. I didn't have as many card readers, and it was Nikon shipped it with a 16 gigabyte card, which was just a little bit small. I can safely say from 2017 through to now, without incident. But if you're a Z user and you want the Z data, it's over 600 days so far. So we're coming up on 2 years soon enough. Don't worry too much about the slots, unless it's SD. And as a final footnote to all of this, just to reiterate, the Z6S and the Z7S, I would love to see 2 of these. I really would. I mean, getting files off these onto your computer is way faster than SD. But as a betting man, I think it's more likely to be 1 of these and 1 SD. But we will see. I look forward to seeing. Anyway, I'd love your thoughts. Let's keep it civilized. Let's not deep dive into 2 versus 1, because I think when you're talking 2 versus 1 and you're talking XQD, CF Express versus SD, you're actually just simply not comparing apples with apples. But I'd love to know your experience. If you're a user, and I know there's a lot of Z6 and Z7 users on my channel, like hundreds and hundreds of you, please share your experiences. Have you had any failures yet? I'd love to know if you're like me. That'd be an amazing collection of data to collect. And also think about practices. Are you engaged in best practices? So are you formatting these before you shoot? Are you not dragging them out when the camera's on and pulling them out of the camera when you haven't unmounted them? All that sort of stuff. Because if you're not engaging in best practices, you should certainly not expect these things to behave. Share that with me. Let's collect this data. Let's share it with the world. I really would love to be able to get it out there. Awesome. Oh, I want to make another small point. I saw on Nikon Rumors about a month ago maybe that there was a certain variant of the SanDisk CF Express that wasn't working or wasn't compatible, and I checked and I've got the little number here at the back. I've got one of the not compatible ones. It completely works. I've had 0 problems with it, so I'm not sure what was going on there. Maybe I will find out at some point, but I'm using these every day and they're working great. Well, that's pretty cool. That's the 35mm lens and it is focusing something like 10 centimeters. That's impressive. Good job, Nikon. As always, it is so good to see you. If this is your first time here, it is lovely to have met you, and I'd love to see you again, so please subscribe, please share, please like, and you can watch over 200 episodes right now by clicking on the Matto and Photography just down here. Okay, ciao.